Hey everybody, it's Fabrizio Aiello. Thanks for joining me. I still don't have a name for this little streamy thing. I am taking recommendations. I believe Dateline is already taken. So, hey Blue Teddy, how's it going? Thanks for joining. I feel like late at night, at 8 o'clock, it's like half asleep, half inking. So it's good to have people to keep me up. Yeah, so tonight I'm going to be coloring these, so I should have time, but I do have to finish inking this dude. So I'll finish inking him, and then I have some watercolors, which I will be painting for this. And I'll probably do Copics for this, but I got to let that dry, so we'll see if I get to that or not. And I realized that what really goes with electronics is water. So if I knock something over and you hear commotion, just imagine the worst case scenario has happened. Alrighty, so this dude, he's one of the monks at the library. I think he might be actually the first time that I've done a sketch card of one of them. I wanted to wait until the second issue was out before I do too many drawings of these guys. Yes, a match made in heaven. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm hoping for the best. We'll see what happens. I don't do a lot of watercolor on these sketch cards because they're tough. Usually what I've had to do is do the watercolor, let them dry, they warp, so then I have to essentially re-stretch the card. So I have to steam the card again, put a bunch of books on it and press it and do all that jazz, which just takes time. But sometimes you just can't beat the watercolor look, especially for this. Wow, that's a lot of ink on the back of this. No, that's kneaded eraser. I hate when that happens. Yeah, so we'll see how these cards hold up with watercolor. But for Sleepy Hollow, I thought that would be perfect. Some really desaturated, kind of muddy tones, grays and blues and whatnot. And just a hint of blue for Horace and a little bit of red for his helmet. Should be enough to like center him in the image. I was just telling somebody recently that I worked in a library in college. Was it over the summer? I think it was over the summer. Man, did I love that job. They would just hand me a cart of books and be like, have at it. And I'm like, I don't know where things are at, and I don't know how much you're expecting to get done. So I would just take this cart of books. I would essentially walk around the library. And it was a pretty big library, too. It was like 8 or 9 floors or something like that. And nobody ever went up to the top floors. And I just kind of perused the books, pulled some out, kind of flipped through them, occasionally putting a book away. My apologies if I put them in the wrong spot, if somebody really needed those for papers. I guess that's not a thing anymore, but yeah, man, that was a good gig. I'm not going to lie. If I could have worked at the library full time, that would have been great. Blue Teddy, I like the effects people get with watercolor, but I found I'm not nearly patient enough for it. Yeah, I'm almost always, I rarely do detailed work with it. So it's washes, it's real loose, it's more tonal stuff. Um, but I get the patience thing. Like, I'm used to doing pen and ink and like real detailed brush work. For watercolor, it's really tough. If you really want to get more photoreal, detailed stuff, you need to wait for it to dry. You need to do layering. So I'm the same way. It's rare for me to to do that kind of stuff. So I usually just use it as like washes, and then if I'm doing detail, it's pen and ink or brush or something like that. Yeah, it was a pretty cool library. And like I said, they and the funny thing is, I know there were times when after my shift was over, I don't know, it wasn't that long, maybe 3 hours, something like that. I would bring the cart of books back down, and sometimes I hadn't put any books away. They didn't check. It was just like, okay, see you tomorrow. I'm like, okay, I will be here, just moving this cart around. No need to check on my work. I always feel like for jobs like that, that there's not a lot of stress, obviously. I mean, I can't imagine much stress. So what ends up happening is, that's where all the inter-office employee drama happens. Whenever the job isn't stressful enough, people make it stressful by, start talking crap about employees and, "Did you see Johnny put the Gutenberg Bible away? Oh my god." So, at least that's the impression I got. So I'm sure as soon as I left, the trash talking happened with me, but I was in college, I didn't care. Yeah, my obsession with books definitely never waned either. I ended up working at a Barnes& and Noble, like, whenever me and my wife go on vacation, we hit the art galleries, and we always try to hit the public libraries too, um, 'cause some big cities have just beautiful public libraries. There is what is it called? The Beinecke in New Haven. I think it's actually technically on the Yale campus. I can't remember, but it's a rare book and manuscript museum, and it is incredible. We just hung out there for like half of a day. Really cool stuff. So I'm gonna try not to put too much more detail in the background because, like I said, I want the washes to actually come through. But I figured he'd have these like gnarly hands at minimum. I had a job where we literally just stuffed envelopes all day, and it was so easy that the drama was nearly constant. Yeah, I absolutely can see that. My day job can get pretty stressful, or at times, um, pretty intense. So there's usually not any of that kind of stuff for me. Oh, I need some background music. If this background music ends up being too loud, just let me know. It's always hard to tell. Luckily, most of it didn't happen in English, so I got to feign blissful ignorance 90%. That's the best kind of ignorance. Yeah, I would do the same thing. Even if you can tell from, like, the tone of a different language, you're like, "I'm just gonna pretend that that nasty look on your face is for something else entirely." I started looking into actual book binding. It's pretty fascinating stuff. As if I don't have enough things to do besides draw, read, write books. Maybe I should bind them. But I thought it might be kind of cool to do like a sketchbook with like one-off binding. I thought that might be pretty fun. When I get a break from work or something, maybe I'll test it out. It always seems so mysterious to me, bookbinding, but it's not as crazy as I once thought. That is the wonder of YouTube. Fix my own breaks. Why not? I didn't do that, but it looks feasible, you know? All right, I think this dude, you know what? I might start putting like a shadow under the logo to make it look like three-dimensional. I don't know if that's going to look cheesy or not. We will find out with this card right here. But that might be kind of fun. So every card in different ways, I'll try to make it look three-dimensional. Yeah, I haven't been looking at it too long, but you know, once it comes up in your feed, it's one of those really addictive things. And you're like, yeah, I could totally do this. Just a few tools. When I was in college, I did have a paper making class, so um, it's along the same lines. Really, just interesting stuff, and I don't know, anything you can make yourself when it comes to artwork is just a lot of fun. I've looked into like making your own paints and things like that. It's all doable. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, this turned out pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. I mean, at this point, I've done quite a few of these pen and ink sketch cards, so I feel like I have a pretty good handle on them. I have a few more sort of larger drawings planned outside the World War One soldier one that I was doing. John's Longbox, how you going? How you doing? Maybe you can help me come up with a name for this channel. I just keep saying, "Hello, it's Fabrizio. Welcome." There's just a pause. Welcome to Fabrizio's long pause. No, I don't know. I am taking recommendations. Diana, how's it going? Are you flatting right now? All right, I think I'm calling this guy done. So I'm going to erase this, and then I'm going to try a little watercolor on the Sleepy Hollow card. Unfortunately, if I mess up the card with the watercolor, there's kind of no coming back from it. You know, obviously I can't really erase, and I mean, these cards are not watercolor paper. So typically you could kind of re-wet the paper and potentially pull out, you know, ink or paint pigments. But with these cards, I probably have one wash, maybe a second, and it's going to really warp badly. So I gotta nail it first go round. And if I don't, I guess I'm redoing this card. Fabrizio's Insanitarium. I like that. Okay, next time I'm going to introduce myself to Fabrizio's Insanitarium. Hey, Mind Tunnel, how's it going? I believe we met at Baltimore, if I'm recognizing the screen name, which is always tough. You could have an easy name like Fabrizio Aiello. Alrighty, so I'm just going to show you my palette because I have used this palette for a very long time, and it is kind of crazy. And as you can see, muddy is all get out. Those are usually the colors that I like. I like kind of muddy watercolors, like I said, because they, like right here, like this sort of yellow, brown. These are just colors that I use a lot for washes. And I thought they'd be great for Sleepy Hollow. Oh, you don't have any pages. Yeah, I am currently still penciling, so I don't have any to give yet. Hopefully soon, though. I'll get back on penciling and inking and passing them on over. All right. So I want to make sure any well, none of these colors are going to be vibrant, but anything with blue really should stick with Horace. And I don't want to use blue anywhere else. At least this more intense blue. That's gonna sit on the card and slowly sink into it and dry, because it is not watercolor paper. Let's see. Can't go too dark, but I mean, colors always will dry lighter, so you can't be too afraid. Mind Tunnel. Do you have any comic book recommendations? Oh man. I mean, I could sit here all day. What kind of comic books are you looking for? I mean, heck, go to John's Long Box. He does reviews of a bunch of old, great comic books that I love. And some I haven't read, but definitely from the eras that I really like. I mean, recent stuff. I've always been a big Goon fan. Will you be in the Comic-Con? I was in Baltimore Comic-Con, and that was last weekend. So I don't really have anything else planned right now. Yeah, so for these watercolors, if you just pick a couple of colors, and while it's wet, you make sure you add the second color, it'll slowly bleed together, which is what you want, instead of having to you know, really be particular with it. Just take 2 colors and try to get them on the paper, whatever paper it is, quick enough so they do all the hard stuff for you. Oh yeah, comic book recommendations. I mean, Sin City's one of my, these are big sort of standard, very famous comic books that I'm giving you, but they're easy to find too. Sin City's one of my all-time favorite comic books, without a doubt. Hold on while I very quickly get this in. I'm going to throw a tiny bit of yellow. The bottom here. So these are not local colors, and by local colors, I mean representative colors. I very much just wanted sort of mood, atmosphere, and just tone more than anything. I'm not really thinking too much about color theory or anything like that. I don't know what date the Comic-Con is or has a... Yeah, it was last weekend for Baltimore. There's a lot of other Comic-Cons out there, but that's the one that I was headed for. Blue Teddy, if there's anyone that can throw out old romance comic recommendations, I'd appreciate it. I know romance used to be a thing in the West too, but I don't know where to start. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm definitely not the person to ask for that. Yeah, if anybody in the chat has any recommendations, just throw them in there. I'm trying to think of the most romance comic that I've probably ever read. I'm coming up short on that. So I am putting a tiny bit of brown, but I'm mixing it with grays. So we'll see how this... Yeah, it's not very brown at all. Just to give the tree a little bit of local color. That's his leg. But that's okay. So I'm going to throw some red. What are those humanoid contraptions, wooden giant robots on the cover of HH #2? That's a good question, which will be answered in issue 3. There was a little more foreshadowing than I was planning on, but you'll definitely see them in issue 3. A fun fact about those wooden contraptions, though, when I was in college, I had to do a 6-foot sculpture using scrap wood for the sculpture class we had. In this sculpture class, we could use anything, right? There was like an old crappy wood shop kind of in the corner, scrap wood everywhere. There was cardboard. So we would just, whatever we wanted to cobble together, basically, to make a sculpture. And I designed this 6-foot wooden robot looking thing, and that is what is on the cover of issue 2. That is 100% taken from these sculptures that I did in college, which quickly, I don't want to say fell apart after class, but I had no place to put them and nothing to do with them after that. Your voice is so soothing. You're like Bob Ross. If Bob Ross painted cosmic horror. Happy little Shoggoths. And here we go. Some tentacles. Here's a miasma. Yeah. I'm definitely not Bob Ross. So I'm going to pop a little bit of red into his helmet. hopefully that doesn't bleed outside, because there's nothing I can do about it after that. So I'm going to really just put a tiny bit. Just enough so people that know Horace know that that's a red helmet. In Mexico tomorrow and Sunday, we celebrate national holidays. Oh, what holidays are they? Not that I would probably have any idea. I do like when countries celebrate a ton of holidays or festivals. Like Italy is very much like that. There's always a festival of some kind of fruit, some vegetable, a saint, a friend of a saint, a friend of a saint who saw another saint. Every tentacle needs a friend. Here you go. Here's a pollen buddy for you, little guy. I wonder what Bob Ross would think of like a Bob Eggleton sort of cosmic horror artist. The kind of stuff I have all over my house right now. I mean, he's so positive. He would probably find, like he would, I don't know, he would comment on how the color was great. And I like how this giant Cthulhu is squashing this guy with his foot. So his little pouches, I do want to pop those out a little bit. So I'm actually going to go with orange, because again, this will definitely dry lighter. And these little pops of color are really the only way to navigate this. So it's looking pretty good, I think. Everything's really desaturated, but we get a little bit of light, almost like it's dusk-ish, magic hour. So I think I'll probably be able to do one more pass. I'm not sure, though. Right now, it hasn't warped too bad. I'll give it a minute. That head needs blood. Those eyes look a little too well adjusted. Can you bump up the insanity? Or Bob Ross starts telling you, it's like, when I was in the sanitarium for some like horrific story, and that's where he learned to paint. All right, so we do need a little bit of gray for his neck rubber. It sounded very strange. Yeah, like his, I don't even know what to call that. That looks really dark, but I'm pretty sure that'll dry light enough. I'm gonna put something on a saddle too. Yeah, my education in horse anatomy was very, I don't know. I was raging. It was fraught with peril. I'm like, I know what a horse looks like, and then you get in there and you're like, I don't know what a horse looks like. And for a split second, you're like, well, does anybody else really know what a horse looks like? And then you gotta bite the bullet. Yeah, spend some time looking at horse photos. Yeah, so the horse is all, like you can see, I had two really distinct colors for this horse that have really dried a lot lighter, and they really bled into each other. But if you don't do that, you'll just have one solid color, and it'll look really fake. I mean, it won't look fake because it's watercolor, but it just won't be, there won't be enough variation in the field of color to give it any interest. I mean, neck rubber is pretty accurate. Yeah, I mean, it is literally what it is. I guess I never thought about it that way, though. So I'm gonna make sure the bottom of the horse is dark. Like right here. So I'm gonna try to do one more coat. Hopefully this doesn't destroy the paper. We shall see. So I'm gonna go real dark with this purple. I haven't read Sleepy Hollow. It's probably been a few years since I read it. It's one of my favorite stories, though. Even though not much happens in the story, I think I might have mentioned this. People always think of the movie, or I guess that there was a Disney cartoon. I've never seen it, but I remember seeing like stills from a cartoon. I don't know if that's Disney or not. I'm sure people know. And I don't know how accurate those are to the actual story. The story's beautifully written. And every Halloween, fall, I really get a hankering to sit down for a little bit and read it. All right, so it looks like I think the paper will be able to take those. And the moon, I need full moon on that picture. Yeah, I was gonna try that, but I mean, this is still a tiny little sketch card, and I actually thought it would be too much. But yeah, I try to work in the moon, but I just think because we have Horace, his head, we have the trees, and then if I had a moon back there, it would have been really difficult to really separate those planes. Okay. Yeah, I don't think that looks, that's not too bad. So I'm going to let this dry. And I'm going to try... Now him I actually wanted to use Copics for. Yeah, I'm going to use Copics for him. I don't want to go real desaturated with this. He's pretty easy as far as colors. So he's red, a little bit of yellow, there's like a yellow trim. I'm thinking his skin color will be like a very light, peachy skin color. We need some books in the background. Again, that's going to be kind of a light brown. And the sort of the, not bandages, but the cloth on his eyes should be a gray. That could be too dark. So we will try, we'll see what that looks like. I think his nails, are they green? I think they're green. I'm taking creative license if they're not. Don't worry, I imagine that image is darker. Thank you. Yeah, I'm kind of digging this. Like the really desaturated Horace it's giving me ideas. Yeah, it's giving me ideas. And that is all you can ask for. That's one of the perks of doing artwork and writing is I do something in a drawing and that sort of sparks a story, and then I can go back and forth. Captain Goodnight. Given your excellent 3D modeling skills, have you ever tried drawing a 3D sketch card using red and blue inks? No, I definitely haven't. I guess I never really thought about that before. Yeah. Maybe I have to think about that. If I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I have to make sure I jump back on the 3D modeling for Chiron Morville on Rob's channel one of these days. Pretty far along with that. You know what? I need two shades of red. If not, that'll look terrible. Yeah, I have to jump back and do some 3D modeling. There's a bunch of. I mean, I would really like to do 3D characters of everybody, 3D models of all the characters. They're just really fun to see realized in 3D, and then obviously you can do 3D prints and models and casts and all that kind of stuff. But it really, yikes, that's not dark enough. Does take some time to do them, and sometimes sometimes when I'm drawing, I have to stop and actually concentrate. Yeah, we can do 3D prints, models, potentially, once you have that 3D model, you can make a game, we'll do a board game, a computer game. It really opens up a world of possibilities on what you can do with those. And maybe you don't do anything and you just do the 3D model, and that's fine. I'm not saying you have to, but it really opens up a world of possibilities. So it does take a little bit of time, but I really, at minimum, would like to get things in the 3D world and then see what happens. So Copics are alcohol markers, and you should be able to blend them. Usually I can, but sometimes, and depending on the paper, of course, it's a lot harder than you would imagine. There is marker paper specific for this, which allows you to blend, but I'm finding out right now with this paper that there's really not going to be any blending to go along with this. I'll try. Yeah. That's fine. So I'll put some trim because he's got like yellow trim around his, I guess the whole robe has a little bit of yellow trim. Color, hopefully people have noticed, is really important in Horace H. Hoover. From the characters' colors to the scene setting colors. I spend quite a bit of time thinking about color because I have such a limited color palette. And I really like the idea of a character. It very much, it's not a new thing. It's an old school idea. I want you to be able to see this character from across the room on a page and realize, oh, it's a big green monster. It's a big green guy. That's the Hulk. I think that was the right approach back in the day, and I think it holds today. This muting of too many colors or airbrushing, it dilutes these characters. And I always look at it as the character's visual appearance is just a concretization of their sort of fundamental views. So what's going on beneath the surface always kind of shows up on top. And that's why people kind of get upset whenever ugly, quote unquote, characters end up being the bad guy. But that's not because we think ugly people are evil. It's just that it's just a physical manifestation, or it's a visual cue. And I've always liked that. You know, that's why your heroes are generally attractive. They're symmetrical. So, and I'm sure people have done way better videos on this than me off the cuff at 8 o'clock, but I admire artists. I really like to see them draw color. My drawing level is very basic. I mean, thank you. I appreciate that. If you're doing anything, though, it's whether it's flatting or basic drawing, I think it's all fun. I mean, it's all the same thing. You know, just because your skill level may not be as high really doesn't change anything. You're making something from nothing. Blue Teddy, I agree. It's just a visual shorthand to get a point across. Yeah. Yep. And sometimes you can use that trope to your advantage and kind of, twist it or whatever, which can be fun too. But I think classics do work for a reason, as long as you know why they work and you're not superficially just doing something without understanding why. Then the message and the use of it can get pretty confusing. And I only have about 20 Copic markers. I think I need about 100 more. Well, when all else fails, use purple as a shadow. I guess it's a little redundant to say it like that, but yeah. I don't know. I have one purple Copic. So this is gonna have to do. That works. I should have started the background a little earlier. $20 is great if they'll. I know. And I don't use them very often, so every time I pull them out, I'm like, I forget what colors I have, and I don't make a mental note to grab new ones every time. Not that I need a billion, but whenever I get a new character that I have to figure out. Okay, we're gonna go real dark in the back. That's not gonna work. I think this is really dark. Wow, this marker's almost dead. I wasn't expecting that. I wonder if I just I break all of the rules and actually do a wash. I wasn't going to, and I don't know how watercolor and Copics go together, but I'm just going to put a wash back here, and then maybe when it dries, I'll go in and do some more detail. I definitely don't want to just do all brown now. It's funny, whenever I see old books, like in a library, and I never really looked into this, they're often white. The binding is white. I don't know if there's a reason for that. In my head, I always picture leather, brown leather, or something like that. But I see white a lot, more than you would think. Unless those are just the weird libraries that I found. Diana, I also sometimes do video game live streams, but I would have liked to been an illustrator. I mean, there's no reason not to. If you're into it, I mean. Yeah, so I put brown, but that's a little too on the nose. So I got a little bit of bluish green in there, and hopefully that will dry and not mess up too much. It's a pretty wet card right now. Yeah, I really just have this muddy, messy palette I always go to. A watercolorist would die at the mud on my palette. They would die. Maybe they're bound with something cheap like cotton, or maybe even muslin. Yeah, I don't know. I should look into it. It's just not something that I ever expect. And then I'm like, wow, that whole library is white, or off-white, yellow kind of thing. But when I buy an old book, and I have a few that are actually pretty old, granted they're not 400 years old. I don't think I've ever seen a book to purchase that's white. I'm thinking of a particular library. I have to find it on Instagram. I have it saved. It's not in the US either. Is it Spain? I can't remember what it was at, but every book was white. All right. So now this is the part of the stream where we watch paint dry. But I think that's a thing now, right? On YouTube, watching paint dry. If not, I'm copywriting it right now. So I have this dude. Well, these are kind of drying. I have this guy, which I might leave with just pen and ink. I think watercolor might be a little too much. I don't know. Does the chat, anybody in the chat, have any preference? Does everybody always like colored to some degree better? I know mixing paint was huge for a while. I thought I remember seeing something like that. I could have been a millionaire in college. Come watch me mix paint poorly. There's a reflection on that. Yeah, I don't know. Are color cards always better? Maybe not always, but you know. Like if you're looking at 3 cards like this, I think our brains just immediately go to the colored ones for sure. And then you have this where there's a lot more detail and line work, and you know, that has its own value or its own interest, I think. Yeah, this paint is still drying. I sometimes prefer black and white. Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's good to know, because sometimes I don't know if people get black and white and they're like, man, if that was colored. But yeah, for some reason, seeing Horace in those really muted tones, like I can completely picture a Horace H. Hoover story painted like that, honestly. Maybe just a one-off. I couldn't do the series painted in watercolor, I don't think. But maybe just a one-off where him, Slurp, and Max travel to some secluded area, maybe New England, and kind of do their own Sleepy Hollow little adventure. Terrytown. All right, I don't think I can really do too much more. Something about these cards, which I think is pretty cool, though, is on the back, I put a little speech balloon for Horace. So I make sure that I fill that out for the characters, which is fun because it just gives me a little more opportunity to have Horace say something, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah, I'm kind of digging this. Now the trick is, so if you have a really muddy palette, you know, when that muddy palette wears out, it's like, oh darn it, it was a cool muddy before, and now it's a warm, crappy muddy, but you don't know how you really got to that mud. It was just pure laziness. So, but I think I could definitely see that. That'd be pretty cool. I see your inks, and you don't know how much I would like to do flats on them. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Alrighty. Captain Goodnight. Depends on the line where color helps your eyes interpret a very detailed ink drawing, but sometimes inking styles stand alone very well. Yeah, I agree. And on the art side, we have a tendency to stick with something. Like if we're in the middle of inking, then we just stick with that. And sometimes we just kind of unfocus our eyes and switch things up on purpose. So I realized I was doing a lot of just black and white pen and ink. So I'm like, I really need to switch it up a bit. And then, I mean, the fact that I saw this and really like it is pretty informative, and that gives me a potential story idea later on. So there's definitely value in just playing around. I'm going to put a little bit of color for that shadow. I really like the idea of making that logo into a shadow. Especially with the watercolor, since it'll bleed really nice. In fact, I will do that for the shelf too, because that has to really recede into the background. Yeah, I mean, watercolor is amazing in how light it dries. Wow. I mean, I thought I went too dark in the background, and now it's too light. So I'm going to do one more darker pass. I'm just going to go brown, purple, and just hit some dark, because we really want this to be darker. Kind of obliterates my my logo dark, but that's fine. We just need these things to go back. I'm trying to think when I got into watercolor, but when I was actually in high school, I remember doing a few watercolors, and again, it was very loose and sketchy and impressionistic. And then I'm like, well, maybe I can apply my pen and ink sort of sensibilities to it. And I would do these watercolors. I would use the watercolor as ink, basically. So I would take a brush with a very fine tip, like I do for Horace H. Hoover, and I would paint with the watercolor inks, which is just really wild when I think about it now. I got some cool effects, but in retrospect, I should have just been using ink. But I was young, and nobody told me otherwise. At university, I learned to paint with watercolors, but I have forgotten much of it. Yeah, just get a set and play around. As you can see from me, from here, that's 90% of what it is. As long as you're not afraid to mess it up, you can usually get by. Alrighty. Okay. I'm at an hour anyway. The goal is really to stream for like an hour just to get a few things done, kind of make headway. I will save these for the next Alterna auction, but if there isn't one soonish, maybe over the next month or two, I'll probably just post these on my website, horacehoover.com, and see if anybody wants them there. Thanks everybody for popping in. I appreciate it. Blue Teddy, Captain Goodnight, Diana, John's Longbox. There's a few other ones in there. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I will talk to everybody later.